Hopefully you're enjoying the Economic Inclusion Conference at Coppin and receiving very valuable information. And we are getting ready to start a segment that I have been looking forward to. We are fortunate to have with us the Executive Director of the Nation of Makers, Dr. Dorothy Jones-Davis is our guest for this segment. And Dr. Jones-Davis, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us and sharing information with us during this segment. And I think, I'm very familiar with the Nation of Makers and have had a wonderful experience. You not only have done a wonderful job with that organization, you're my friend, so I know a lot. But please tell our viewers, if you would, a little bit about your background, the Nation of Makers, how you got involved with them.
Yeah, so Nation of Makers is a national association for maker organizations. And really, we do three big things. We do community building, resource sharing, and advocacy within the maker community. And I know I'm really familiar with making, and you're very familiar with making, but for those who might not be familiar with the maker movement and what it does, makers are people that actually innovate and make in communities all around the United States and around the world. And these makers tend to congregate together at what are known as maker spaces. And these are just open innovation spaces, often within communities across the entire nation that have the tools and technologies to make just about everything and the training to do so as well. And so Nation of Makers is really proud to come along as a support for those organizations to strengthen them. And my background actually is a kind of funny one. I started out as a neuroscientist many years ago. And after doing a policy fellowship at the National Science Foundation, ended up getting engaged with the maker movement at the national level, working with President Obama's administration to really push forward what this movement could do. And so at the end of that administration, when there was an organization being formed to really carry on the work of the administration and the President's Nation of Makers initiative, our organization was founded. And I was lucky enough to become the founding executive director of the organization. So I've been here for 5 years and just really excited to continue to push along this work and continue to support all of these entrepreneurs and innovators and makers across our country to reach their fullest potential and be able to have the impact on their communities economically and socially that they can have, which is tremendous.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's awesome, and I know part of your charge or part of what you have hoped to do is to educate the community about exactly what the maker movement is and how it can really be transformational in terms of economics and economic trajectory of a community. But what would you consider over the past 5 years or so? What are some of your, I would say, major achievements? What are you most proud of about what the Nation of Makers has been able to accomplish?
Yeah, I mean, we have a number of different initiatives that have been persistent since the founding of Nation of Makers that really have really filled those buckets. So, in community building and bringing our community together, each year we have an annual convening. This is a leadership convening for those that are running those maker organizations. Those are affiliated with organizations that are supporting the maker movement. That conference is called NOMCON, NOMCON. And it's been happening since the beginning of Nation of Makers, and really is an opportunity for people to come together, share best practices, learn from one another, and really look towards the future for what the maker movement can hold forth. Similarly, another event that we have that I probably would put more into our advocacy bucket is our Capitol Hill Maker Faire. So some folks might be familiar with the Maker Faire brand, and Maker Faire is something that was founded by Dale Doherty at Make Magazine and Maker Media. And that fair happens across the world. And it's a celebration of making that showcases what people are able to do and make. it's billed as the greatest show and tell out there. And it really is an opportunity for people within a community to showcase what the maker movement's impact is. And so we've taken this from just being a community fair into the halls of Congress. And so every year we host what's called the Capitol Hill Maker Fair right in the halls of Congress. The last few years, obviously, there's been COVID, so we've done it virtually. But traditionally, we hold it in the Rayburn cafeteria, right in the middle, in the Rayburn House cafeteria office building. And it's a great opportunity for our congressional leaders to see what people are doing within their districts, to understand what's happening within their states, to really see that economic impact, to see the businesses form, the lives changed, all of the revenue that's coming into cities and towns, the transformational just potential on people's lives, and even the impacts on things like education, on healthcare, on science. And so it's just something we're just really so excited to showcase every year. Those would probably be the top two exciting things that we've done. We also have a great resource library that we've shared with folks. There are countless folks that we've brought together and countless partnerships, like our Department of Energy partnership that we have, which allows us to reach into the maker community and garner innovation within the energy sector to propel forward energy innovation. And we do that through the American Made Prize challenges. So we've had impact in solar, geothermal, and including the most recent one that we've had, which is the Inclusive Energy Innovation Prize, which is across all energy sectors, trying to broaden the communities that are engaged in energy innovation. So we're really proud of all of those. I guess one more I will say, sorry, they're coming to me now that I started talking.
That's great. That's great.
One of the other ones that we're really, really excited about, and this is actually a place where I think you and I obviously overlap, is the HBCU Making and Innovation community. And I'm very proud of our partnership with the HBCU Making and Innovation community, as well as our partnerships with our tribal colleges, because I think that, traditionally the maker movement has been slow moving into communities of color. And so we're just so excited to, continue to partner with our communities of color within the collegiate realm to try to promote making and innovation as a way to, find future prosperity and to, increase the number of minority and underserved entrepreneurs and innovators going into STEM fields, creating their own businesses, coming up with innovations and contributing and continuing to contribute to, the future of our nation. And so it's really, really exciting. We also have a BIPOC Makers Collective that we've started in the last few years. So really the work that we've also been doing around intentionality and making sure that this particular movement isn't just for one type of person, right? But that it belongs to all of us, and that this innovation through making has been happening in communities of color for generations, just as long, if not longer, than in communities that are in the mainstream. So really trying to promote and do some work to rebrand in a way what is a maker. So those are some of the things. There's probably more, but I'll stop.
No. And those are fantastic. And I'm going to build on a few things that you've said. But before I forget it, NAMCON this year, when are the dates and how do people register?
Yes, so you can go to, I'll start with the second half. You can go to nomcon.org, so nomcon.org, and you'll find all the information. What's new this year, usually we have NAMCON only over a couple days, but this year we're very excited. We've broadened NAMCON, so it's across the entire month of June. And so we'll actually have 5 days across the month of June. If you have your calendar and you go in a reverse diagonal, you'll get all the dates. So it's the first Friday, second Thursday, third Wednesday, fourth Thursday, and fifth Friday, fifth Monday. No, I did that backwards. Sorry. Friday, Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Monday. So reverse diagonal. And we're really excited this year because we're taking the fact that we've been around for 5 years and using those 5 days to look forward at the next 5 years of this movement and what it can do. And so of particular interest to this community, are the different sort of themes we have. The first theme is education. Our second theme is economic impact and workforce development. Our third theme is social, racial, and community justice. Our fourth theme is around health and science. And the fifth day, we'll take some time and talk about how do we nurture and sustain this entire movement. So it's very exciting. And if you want more information to register, to actually submit a proposal, just go to nomcon, nomcon.org.
Oh, okay, fantastic. And one of the great things that I learned over the course of these 5 years or so that I've been connected to the movement was that there is actually a makers caucus in Congress. Yeah, who knew? But that's great. And something that is current, it just happened, as people are learning about maker spaces and the maker movement, the pandemic, I really believe, is as difficult as it has been, it really shined a light on the value that maker spaces can have, in particular, in terms of local production, local manufacturing, small scale production, entrepreneurial opportunities, the ability to be agile and contribute in a real significant way. How do you think that has helped us, or how can we build on the value that has been demonstrated during difficult times? Can you say something about that?
Yes, and yes, definitely. We as makers, as the maker community, were incredible during COVID-19. And I think, as you said, there was a light shone on the entire community, because what happened was, we had a real concrete, just-in-time problem, right? And that's what makers do. They solve problems. Like, if you wanted to give a blanket statement of what makers do, they make things to solve problems. And so, as you know, we had this supply chain shortage, in particular of masks and personal protective equipment. And we had thousands of people across the globe that banded together and shared design ideas, really iterated on technology that was currently existing, reverse engineered things that were in hospitals that were costing too much money, or that, hospitals could no longer get, to produce over 48 million pieces of personal protective equipment across the world. And 37 million of that was in the United States from our research and our survey. And that was just an incredible opportunity to really think about what happens when you empower communities to give them the tools and technologies to make solutions to their local problems, right? And what happens when you network those folks across communities? Let's say we're facing something like a global pandemic, and say, I'm going to connect you to somebody else who might be completely across the globe, who might be seeing things the way you are. And what is the power of that, right? And what are the businesses that can be formed? What are the solutions that we can come up with? And how can we get out of our own crises? We're not waiting for someone to come and solve our problems. And so it was the most concrete example we've ever had, because the problem was so large that people were compelled to stop what they were doing. So much of the work was volunteer work that people just stopped what they were doing and said, no, I have to help. I have to give my skills to this, to this champion. And so basically, we've had this opportunity now to leverage what happened in our sort of storytelling. So we were able to write a report about it and share that report with congressional leaders as well as other local leaders, and really have garnered a lot of interest. My colleague Sabrina Merlot from the Open Source Medical Supplies wrote this wonderful Day One policy paper about what it could look like if we created a digital stockpile. What would it look like if we utilized makers and came up with some infrastructure, right, for makers to respond to emergency challenges and even everyday challenges, right? And so now we're trying to sort of socialize that around and get more interest and hopefully some funding opportunities. But I wanted to play on something, and maybe you were already about to ask this, in our own state here in Maryland, that response actually was key in us making the case for some exciting legislation, the Maryland Makerspace Initiative, that, you know, hopefully our governor will sign the paper and get it passed all the way through, but that has recently passed, you know, that shows that, you know, if you, you know, are able to fund maker spaces, the work that they do is not just educational in a K-12 sense, but really has tangible impacts on your community's resilience in the face of crisis, and your community's ability to create businesses and economic returns for that community, right? So I think there's just this incredible case, and COVID, for as awful as it is, I mean, I can't be mad at it for the opportunity that it's given the maker community to showcase what we really can do when we're putting our minds to it. And certainly what we could do is even greater if we're supported to do it.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up, because I'm not sure that people are aware that Maryland is sort of leading the nation with that maker space initiative bill that will expand maker spaces. And in states where we have both urban and rural areas that have economic need, the ability of maker spaces, and you mentioned it before, to create community where people can design and create and contribute, and build economic impact together. I think it will be demonstrated even further with some public support.
Yeah.
So I think we have a real opportunity here, and we want to create awareness around it, but also continue to demonstrate. The last question I have for you, you mentioned this before also, the HBCU community and communities of color, and being more inclusive, and having things happen in a more equitable way. What are the roles that you think, and you mentioned the HBCU Maker Showcase that we both are work along with. What do you think we can do to even expand it further within the HBCU community, and really maximize the contributions that can be made by from those institutions?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a few different things. So, you know, one thing that occurred to me when I look at our community, right? I think we've had a very strong narrowing of what making is, right? We put it in sort of a box, and it has certain technical parameters. At least this is in mainstream making, right? And we don't necessarily celebrate all of the cultural making that people do. We don't necessarily celebrate the interface of making into science as much as we do into technology. For example, we may focus more on the engineering aspects versus the bioengineering aspects, right? Or the bio aspects of things. And so what I think in watching over the years as this showcase has grown and evolved is the richness that our HBCUs have in thinking about making in a much more dynamic way than the traditional maker movement does. And so I think that there's this incredible opportunity for us to learn as a maker community from HBCU and other minority communities what type of making is going on in those communities, right? And to leverage that and to learn from that and to work with that to really expand our definition of the maker movement, which is something I've personally been trying to do in general. And so I think it just gives me a lot of pride to know that our communities may be the communities that end up doing that. So I think that's one place where I see there's a lot of opportunity. I think there's further opportunity to actually expand infrastructure at HBCUs. So I think a lot of our HBCUs, we don't have HBCUs that are R1 institutions, so we don't necessarily have the facilities yet, even though there certainly have been gains trying to move in that direction for our different historically Black colleges and universities, the same with our tribal colleges and universities, the same with our MSIs. You know, pretty much all of these classifications of institutions are up against sort of the same battles, you know, because of systemic inequalities that have persisted over generations. But I think now infrastructure dollars going to these institutions to build the types of facilities that would have increased technology, knowing that, again, technology is not the only thing, right? In terms of, you know, the benefit of the maker movement, but investing in technology is another place. And then I think the third place that I like to focus on is really the interface and interplay with the actual communities that our HBCUs and TCUs and MSIs are all within. Almost all of these institutions, for historic reasons, are located in lower income, disadvantaged communities that have been marginalized, by structurally, by train tracks, by all kinds of structural infrastructure pieces that have kept them siloed off into a different part of a different neighborhood, right? But the benefit of that is that we have our communities still there, right? And there's a powerful opportunity for us to reach over the ivory tower and say, hey, what can we be doing with our communities? So when we think about what the value of a maker approach is, and we use COVID, for example, as an example, we see that the benefit is that we have a community problem that the community is now empowered in partnership with the academic institution to solve. And so how can we reach back to our communities, our local communities, and bridge? And I think that also is some level of funding, right? That still needs to happen to make that happen. But some of it is really strategic thinking, both from the HBCU side, but then also national organizations like Nation of Makers, like other organizations coming together and saying, how can we help facilitate this community building and community development? Because it's not all just infrastructure, right? It's not just building a makerspace. It's also the actual, and you've done such enormous work at Coppin State looking at this, the trust relationships, the built, communication between the local community and the local makerspace. And so I think there's an opportunity for our HBCUs to lead this work, and and our tribal colleges, MSIs, all of those types of institutions, through a building of their capacity, and then a building of their capacity to reach into their community.
Thank you so much. And yes, we want you to know that you have a full partner at Coppin State University, and we are excited about the opportunities to work with Nation of Makers and to further the participation of people of color into the making movement. Thank you so much for joining us, and we're looking forward to hearing more. Make sure you register, everybody, for NAMCON, the 5 days that are coming up in June 2022. Yes. Thank you so much, Dorothy.
Take care. Thank you so much for having me. It's just a pleasure to be here, and very much keep enjoying this wonderful conference.